So basically, first I want to kind of go over. We had a great call yesterday asking us about the the House Progressive Caucus put out a budget, which I guess actually got an up or down vote in the House yesterday, kind of quietly, or the day before. A lot of Democrats voted against it, and there's three budget plans out there right now, and I'll just kind of review them really briefly, but I want to get into how they're being covered and talked about in the media. So basically, Paul Ryan, he released the plan, he re-upped. It's the usual, just kind of sociopath's delight of a budget. It's, slashes food stamps, slashes Pell grants, eliminates healthcare reform, except actually for cuts and additional taxes, which are scored into it. So it's, and he's actually getting a bit of backlash. I think he's getting less of a pass from the media, which is interesting, and I would love for you
Yeah,
to
he's
address.
funny because nobody likes him anymore.
Right,
Um,
right.
and I find that funny as hell. Yeah, there's a piece, I think Howie Kurtz wrote it, and Howie Kurtz is always a good barometer of what inside Washington is thinking.
Right.
He wrote it for the Daily Beast on how, like, no one's really taking Paul Ryan seriously anymore. It's really it's worth a read. It's sort of how that basically when he ran such an unbelievably dishonest campaign, the plant shut down in Janesville because of Obama. Oh wait, that happened like 2 years or a year before Obama came into office. You may remember that one. He's stealing $716 million from Medicare. Oh wait, my budget does the same thing. And it wasn't stealing; it was taking it out, savings from overcharging. But all the dishonest things he said, which were, and that number is 716 billion, by the way, not million.
Right.
All the dishonest things he did during the campaign kind of took the glow off of him. The fact that there ever was a glow tells you that it's Washington.
Exactly right.
But he still probably does wear his hat slightly cocked back when working out, and that's important. Because
Hey, girl.
the fact that he's doing P90X, I do miss all those stories about what a hard working out man he is. Look, everything came out during the campaign about just what a complete hypocrite he is, and sort of his talking about brands. His brand was kind of destroyed. One that never was deserved, as Paul Krugman pointed out again and again. The guy was basically a fraud that drew a bunch of numbers on a wall, and none of them made any sense, and none of them were based upon reality. And I think it's sort of like, sometimes it takes sort of a critical mass for something to happen.
Right.
And I think maybe the whole new budget eliminating Obamacare was maybe the thing that threw it over the edge, where people were like, okay, just give me a break, buddy. You're not serious. You're not putting out a budget that anybody's paying any attention to that's realistic in any sense of that word. And, there are realistic budgets out there that come from the center and the right, ones that I disagree with, ones that do terrible things, in my opinion, to the social safety net, but at least the numbers add up.
Right, absolutely.
And they're not complete fallacies. This guy is a joke, and we all seem to know it. We knew it, but everyone seems to know it now, so that's kind of nice. I think his approval rating is at 35% now. And for all of those out there who, a reminder to all of you that if we can get someone good to run in his district again, he's in a district that's a swing district that he only got like 53% of the vote or 54% of the vote last time in his congressional district. The dude is vulnerable.
Yeah, he's very vulnerable. And I think, just the kind of two only additional things to really note about Paul Ryan, I think one, with regards to him specifically, I think what was so stunning about the campaign and his lies during the campaign about things like the plant closing down were that they were so, like, that point could have been illustrated and that talking point could have been hit with, literally dozens of other examples. So he started to come out like yes, have plants shut down during the Obama administration in the industrial Midwest? Of course,
Right.
I'm sure, of course, they've shut down during every other administration, but the point is, just for purposes of making that point in his speech, he was reaching for lies that seemed so lazy and pathological, and sort of disconnected from the reality of basic monitoring, that it just was like, what do you kind of take us for collectively? And I think that's what started to offend the press. I would assume as well. And I guess the other thing, and I think this draws into the second question that I want to get to, because you mentioned other budgets, and Patty Murray put out the Democratic Senate budget. That's a very kind of conventional centrist document, trims some spending, closes some loopholes, bumps up some taxes. it's not great. It doesn't really seem to do much. That's kind of a status quo budget.
Right.
And then with Paul Ryan, but I think with Paul Ryan is like the default now is that he's not to be taken seriously. But the default 8 months ago was that he was to be taken profoundly seriously. And then you look at something like the Progressive Caucus budget, which again, okay, so this is a very it raises taxes significantly on upper income bracket. It has I think a
Well,
couple.
and one thing I'll say about that, I
Yeah,
don't mean
go
to
ahead.
cut you off, but I think
Yeah,
it's
please.
hugely important, is that we still walk around with these definitions, that are handed down in many cases from the 1970s and 80s, of what wealthy is and what I mean, people have started making with our growing income disparity and the fact that also, well, it's 2013 now, not 1978. People have started making vast, unbelievable, really, sums of money
Absolutely.
in certain sectors, and we know what those sectors are, of course. So to treat, as we do right now, someone who makes $250,000 or $400,000 or whatever it is, and say that everybody above $400,000, as if somebody making $400,000 is the same as somebody making $400 million,
Absolutely.
is crazy. And so the the Progressive Caucus budget, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if I'm correct, they have a surtax at some point, and hopefully you can help me and remind me. I should be better prepared, and I apologize for that.
Oh,
at
no,
what
no,
point
yeah,
it is, but when you're making, I don't know if it's 10 million, I don't know if it's 100 million, but it's at some point where you're making some outlandish sum of money where your tax rate would effectively go up to about 49%. Which, by the way, for people, that is still lower than the Reagan era tax rates before. That's the second tax cut in '86. For most of Reagan's term, you had a 50% tax rate for people who were at the top. So just to be clear about that, for anybody who and starts lionizing Reagan. Reminder: during Eisenhower, that top rate was like 91%.
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. And that's a really, really crucial point you're making, because I think that what a lot of people say sometimes when it's a very standard Sunday morning talking point, and it's not an illegitimate one, that like, look, yes, if you are raising a family in New York City or something, and you make a couple $100,000 a year, sure, okay, you're better off than most of the population, but that is a middle class income in certain places. But what their budget does is exactly what you're saying. It really starts to distinguish upper middle class or even somewhat affluent with truly just astonishing levels of concentrated wealth. And it says, yeah,
Right.
we need to bring this back up to a higher tax rates of 49% and open up government investment. And
right,
I guess
and that was the point I was trying to
Yeah.
make. And look,
Yeah.
people making a few $100,000 a year or whatever, you're still doing very well, and you're doing better than most of the 98, 99% of people out there, and that's great. And I don't begrudge anybody that they should do that well. Everyone should do
Absolutely.
that well.
Right.
The only point I was making is, you know what? And I think people making $200,000, $100,000 a year and living in New York, or LA or something could agree with me on this. That they're not in the same class as a guy running a hedge fund who's making $400 million.
Absolutely.
And so there's a lot of, to me, we've sort of ignored that, and we've done that on purpose. It's the same reason we've allowed the carried interest loophole to continue existing for the Mitt Romneys of the world. We're losing all this money, essentially, that we should be getting not from people that make $200,000 or $400,000 or $50,000 or $25,000, but we should be getting from people that make $400 million.
Right.
Because as Bud Fox said to Gordon Gekko in Wall Street, that's right, I'm going old school on this, how many boats can you water ski behind? There is a certain point where this is ludicrous, and our country needs the money, and you've benefited disproportionately, enormously, from the laws and institutions and stability of this country. And I'm sorry, but if you're making $400 million a year, you really need to be giving a lot more back than somebody who's making $400,000 or making $40,000.
And the real logical follow-up question to that is, how many boats is enough, Cliff? No, I'm just kidding.
I like 2 boats myself.
Yeah. All right, 2 boats. That seems
Then
really
I can
fair.
kind of choose. Do I want to go left? Do I want to go right? You let go one of the ropes, you know what I mean? And you choose to water ski off in that direction. I mean, so I'm going to go with 2.
Right.
Some others might go with 3. My guess is if you make $400 million a year, you probably could afford about 2,700 of those boats, and that's too much.
makes total sense. I think that
I'll leave it in there for anybody to determine. But I mean, on a serious note, I really feel very strongly about that. And I
absolutely.
think that we generalize too much, and we throw everybody in there together. And again, this is not to say to people, because a lot of people are listening to this show, a lot of people listen to what I write or what I say. Not a lot of people, 5 people, but whoever listens to what I write or what I say. I'm not trying to act like people who make $400,000 or make $200,000 aren't doing very well, because they are. I'm just saying that to throw them in, it hurts all of us when you start off and you say that's the starting point of being rich, and everybody who makes more than that is the same, because it allows the people at the top to get away with a lot.
No, absolutely. It's a radically different proposition. And I think what I want to get into to kind of tie this together, though, is that so the Progressive Caucus has released this budget that, yeah, it's a genuine center left budget. It's grounded in the type of economic theories that have been most vindicated over the last couple of years. People like Krugman and everybody who we always reference, who are saying we need more stimulus, we need more investment. It makes the type of distinctions you're talking about in terms of rates, because it really goes after the what I think Krista Freeland calls the super class, right? This is a totally
Yes.
distinct proposition. This is not people, again, who are upper middle class, doing okay, doing well. Fine. That's a very distinct thing. Now, this gets no press hearing. So even as Paul Ryan is finally being rightfully taken to the woodshed a little bit, that's still big news that he's released this ludicrous budget that isn't going to pass, that is like a comical assault on 98% of the population. And now the biggest piece of press cover of writing on this Progressive Caucus budget are 2 things that I saw. One was Business Insider did this, granted this isn't great methodology, but they did this Survey Monkey poll of their readers, and they gave them 3 budgets. I laugh to even say it, but I think it illustrates a point. They gave them 3 budgets. They gave them Ryan's budget, Patty Murray's budget, the Senate Democrats, and Progressive Caucus. And without names attached, the Progressive Caucus budget won. And then David Brooks wrote a piece on the Progressive Caucus budget for the New York Times, which, as a lot of his pieces do, are kind of interesting and have some interesting historical references and don't seem to bear any resemblance to any world that you and I or other sort of sentient beings occupy. So what I'm curious is, like,
No, those Brookses, they're always troublemakers.
hey, he's sullying the brand, man.
And I'll join in with you, by the way, on this and say that I'm as guilty as you, because if you're going to get in trouble for having the same name as this guy, then I should freely and come out and admit that I attended the same school in New York City up through the 8th grade. Not at the same time, because he's older than me, thank God. But I attended the same school as him, too, so I'm equally as guilty. Although, in my defense, Matt Iglesias, Nick Confessori, and a bunch of other people that you've probably heard of also went to that school. So,
I haven't. Ooh, what is this? Are you filling in for the Name Drop Friday here with Wonks?
Oh, God.
Is that what's going on?
I remember, I really didn't think the people I'm mentioning were, like, dropping names. If I wanted to drop names, I would tell you cool people I know.
Well done.
Now I'm sure I'll get emails from Confessori and Iglesias and people if they listen to this calling me an asshole, which I probably deserve.
Cool. What the hell, man? But why
Okay,
seriously,
I'll give you somebody
what is
cool.
it going to
Name
take?
drop Friday. Here's somebody cool that went to this very same institution. This is worth a name drop.
Yeah, please.
My first grade teacher at this institution, who was one of the best teachers I've ever had in my life, true story, very true,
Yes.
whose name was Mrs. Duchovny, who had a son named David, who you may be familiar with, who went to this school is Grace Church. It's in Greenwich Village.
He's my pharmacist.
I'm sorry?
I'm kidding, Cliff. Go ahead.
I didn't hear what you said.
I said he's my pharmacist. I'm joking. Yeah,
yes. Hey, his mom was awesome. Don't go off on his addicted sexuality. Oh, wait, I said that. No, his mom was an amazing first grade teacher, Meg Duchovny, who I loved. And really one of those teachers, when you look back at the ones that kind of set you on your path in all seriousness. Her son, David, was there about 7, 8 years, maybe 9 years ahead of me. And thankfully for Grace Church, it's turned out very well, because they have benefited from David's financial success, and they have all sorts of wonderful new facilities and whatever. And yes, David Brooks also went there, and a few of the other characters who I named. So in Greenwich Village, great school. And by the way, liberal attached to the Episcopalian Church, not a Catholic school, and very liberal. So there you go.
I believe it. That sounds great. So, but I guess just to kind of sum this up, when does the
I got
progressive?
off on a tangent.
No,
I
it
just
was,
felt
it was
bad
an
because
odd.
I busted on you for the Brooks, so I figured I should at the very least admit that I went to the same school as the guy. If the name connects you and sullies your reputation, then I suppose having attended the same institution as this guy should sully mine.
Well, hey, what are we going to do here? I mean, maybe you had more of a choice of what the school you went to than my name, but
Yeah,
probably
I blame
not
my
too much
parents.
of a choice.
Go ahead.
But at any rate, so I'm just to kind of tie it up. What is it going to take for the press to cover a progressive caucus budget in the same way it covers a Ryan budget, considering that
Well,
it's
you know what? I think this would be. We may not want this to be a segue into something else.
Yeah.
If we were, to things we might talk about when it comes to kind of. Well, I don't know if actually we're going to have that meta discussion on this show. That may have been one we had in the past about sort of, we do it a lot, the progressive funding on the left versus funding on the right. We're doing a lot better. We've got there's progressive voices on MSNBC. There are on Current. They will become Al Jazeera America and hopefully do well. There are certainly in some magazines that have done some. I mean, Mother Jones on the gun issue, I'll tell you, is one I work on, and with the work that David Korn obviously did, exposing the 47% video and other stuff. I mean, there are some amazing pieces of infrastructure out there that were out there before but didn't have as loud a voice, or weren't out there at all. As of 5-6 years ago, or maybe more than that, a little more than that, when MSNBC featured the likes of Alan Keyes.
You remember the name of this show? I just have to say, remember the name of Alan Keyes' show on MSNBC?
I don't. Remind me.
Making Sense with Alan Keyes.
One thing that dude has never done has made sense.
I know.
Sense a million?
Like he would. It would be like.
He was mocking himself.
It would be like being Gentile with Sam
Seder. I don't make any sense. What are you talking about? I know. If you may like President Obama, if you're listening to the show, you may not like President Obama. You may think he's too conservative for you. Whatever it is, for his existence, you should probably thank Alan Keyes. Because it's Alan Keyes who ran in that race against him in 2004 for the Senate in Illinois, even though Alan Keyes lived in Maryland, where he got, I think, 30% of the vote. He made sense. Let's put it that way. They also, at the time, you may remember, had Michael Savage as a host who told one of the callers into his show who was gay, that they should get AIDS and die, which cost him his show on MSNBC. You actually, at that time, on MSNBC, probably had to push it that far to actually get thrown off if you're a conservative. Mary Madeline had a show at some point. Ollie North. We can go through the illustrious history of those who had shows back on the old MSNBC, but let's just say it was certainly no progressive outlet. And so, look, that's improving, but you put all the progressive think tanks together, and you will have not near the budget and PR capabilities of just the Heritage Foundation.
Right.
Who's now run by Jim DeMint. They've even thrown out the sort of false image that they even care about policy. That they're now essentially just admitting we're just a political operation. Right. Where they used to pretend that they were something otherwise. So it's going to take some of that. It's going to take the culture further changing. I mean, things move slowly, man. They move slowly, way too slowly at times. But, and that's what you see, which is the press. You see more and more stories on the growing demographic that favors, gun safety and favors contraception as a right and abortion rights and gay marriage. I mean, we've seen those stories, but look how long. It's been pretty obvious that that's a growing demographic now for a good decade. And look how long it took for those stories to finally, that things are changing. And as things change in Washington, the Republicans have still been able to sort of create this false image they've got power because they've been able to gerrymander themselves into power in the House.